What would you do if you caught your own mother, on camera, saying you'd just accept being robbed of your home? I'm Myra, 34 years old, and the security system I installed to protect my house ended up protecting something far more valuable: my self respect. While I was 7,000 miles away on the biggest business trip of my career, my parents walked into my home with a spare key, measured the rooms, and plotted to move my unemployed brother and his girlfriend in, without asking me, without telling me. Because, as my mother put it at exactly 2:47 p.m. on March 3rd, once everything is here, she will not make a scene, she will just accept it. They were wrong. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. This is the story of how I stopped being the easy daughter, and what happened when my family finally realized I had a spine. Growing up as the oldest child in the Seward family meant one thing: you figured it out yourself. When I was 16, my brother Kyle got a brand new Ford Mustang for his birthday. Cherry red, leather seats, the whole deal. My parents threw him a party with 30 kids from his class. When I turned 16 2 years earlier, I got a used Honda Civic that I paid for myself, half from babysitting money, half from a loan my father reluctantly co-signed. My party was dinner at Applebee's with 4 friends. I never complained. That was the pattern. Myra doesn't need anything, my mother would tell relatives at Thanksgiving, her hand waving dismissively. She's so independent, so strong. She'd say it like a compliment, but what I heard was different. What I heard was, Myra won't make a fuss, so we don't have to try. By the time I graduated from the University of Colorado with a degree in computer science, I'd learned to expect nothing. Kyle, meanwhile, dropped out of community college twice, got bailed out of credit card debt 3 times, and still managed to be the one my parents called their hope for the future. I paid off my student loans, $47,000, in 6 years. Alone. No help. Kyle still owed $23,000 on his, and my mother had been making his minimum payments for the last 18 months. When I found that out at Christmas dinner last year, I didn't say a word. Because that's what strong daughters do, right? They absorb, they accommodate, they accept. I spent 34 years believing that my silence was strength. I didn't realize it was just convenient. For everyone except me. But here's the thing about being underestimated for 3 decades. When you finally decide to stop, nobody sees it coming. By March 2024, I'd built a life that should have made my family proud, if they'd ever bothered to pay attention. I was a senior cybersecurity consultant at Sterling Cyber Solutions, one of the top security firms in Denver. My salary was $185,000 a year, plus bonuses. I'd worked my way up from junior analyst in 7 years, earning certifications, leading teams, closing deals. My LinkedIn profile had over 8,000 connections. My name was on 3 published white papers about enterprise security protocols. None of this registered with my family. To them, I was still Myra in Colorado, the daughter who moved away, who didn't call enough, who was too busy with her computer stuff to come home for every holiday. The fact that my computer stuff protected Fortune 500 companies from ransomware attacks didn't seem to matter. What did matter to me was my house. In 2021, I bought a 3-bedroom home in Aurora, just outside Denver. 4,800 square feet, 2-car garage, finished basement with its own bathroom. I put down 20%, $97,000, from savings I'd accumulated over a decade. The total price was $485,000, and the mortgage was in my name alone. It was the first thing I'd ever owned that no one could take credit for. No one could say they helped. It was mine. I installed a Ring security system the month I moved in, 6 cameras, including 2 inside, because I traveled for work and lived alone. The footage backed up automatically to the cloud, stored for 30 days. I thought I was protecting myself from burglars. I never imagined the real threat would walk in with a spare key and call me sweetheart at Christmas. To understand what happened, you need to understand my mother. Donna Seward was 59 years old and had spent 3 decades building a reputation at the Hillcrest Country Club in our hometown of Westbrook, Ohio. She chaired charity galas. She organized golf tournaments. She was on the welcoming committee for new members. Her entire identity was wrapped up in appearing to have the perfect family: successful husband, accomplished children, tasteful home decor. The problem was, only half of that image was real. My father, Gerald, had retired from his middle management job at a manufacturing company 4 years ago. He was a quiet man, the kind who'd rather mow the lawn than confront his wife about anything. I loved him, but I'd stopped counting on him for backup somewhere around age 12. He'd look at me with sad eyes sometimes, like he knew I was being treated unfairly, but he never said a word. Conflict with Donna wasn't worth the trouble. Then there was Kyle. My brother was 31 years old and had held 6 different jobs in 8 years, never for more than 18 months. Sales rep at a car dealership, bartender, insurance adjuster, personal trainer for 3 months. Each time he quit or got fired, my mother found a reason it wasn't his fault. Bad management, toxic coworkers, the economy. By March 2024, Kyle was unemployed again and 3 months behind on rent for his apartment, $4,200 in the hole. His landlord had started eviction proceedings. His girlfriend, Brittany, was 28 and also unemployed. 3 weeks before my business trip, my mother called me with a suggestion. "Myra, honey, I've been thinking. You have all that space in your house, and Kyle just needs a few months to get back on his feet. Wouldn't it be nice to help your brother?" I said no, politely but firmly. She sighed, said, "I just thought family helped each other," and hung up without saying goodbye. I assumed that was the end of it. I was dangerously wrong. The week after my mother's call, my boss pulled me into his office with news that changed everything. David Morrison was the director of client solutions at Sterling Cyber Solutions, a no-nonsense former military guy who'd built the consulting division from scratch. He didn't waste words, and he didn't hand out compliments lightly. "Myra," he said, sliding a folder across his desk, "I'm putting you on Meridian." My heart stopped. Meridian Financial Group was a Singapore-based investment firm expanding into the U.S. market. They needed a complete security overhaul, network infrastructure, data encryption, compliance protocols, the works. The contract was worth $2.3 million over 3 years. It was the biggest deal Sterling had ever pursued in the Asia-Pacific region. "You'll fly out March 1st, David continued. 12 days on site with their IT leadership. If you close this, you're looking at senior manager and a $45,000 bonus." I stared at the folder. Inside were briefing documents, org charts, technical specifications. This was the opportunity I'd been working toward for 7 years. "I won't let you down," I said. David nodded. "I know. That's why you're going." That night, I booked my flights, Denver to Singapore via Tokyo, departing March 1st, returning March 13th. The final contract signing was scheduled for March 15th at our Denver headquarters, with Meridian's CFO flying in to formalize the deal. I emailed my family a brief update. I'd be traveling for work and would be unreachable except for emergencies. My mother replied with a single line, "So your house will be empty for 12 days?" I didn't think twice about the question. I should have, because while I was focused on the biggest win of my career, my family was planning something else entirely, and they had 12 days to execute it. March 1st, 2024, 6 a.m. Denver International Airport. I stood at the security checkpoint with my carry-on and laptop bag, running through my mental checklist for the 100th time. Presentation decks, loaded. Technical documentation, reviewed. Backup chargers, packed. I was as ready as I'd ever be. Before I left, I'd given a spare key to my neighbor Rachel Holloway, a 36-year-old project manager at a tech startup who'd become one of my closest friends since I moved to Aurora. She had my alarm codes, my emergency contacts, and instructions to water my one surviving houseplant if she remembered. "Text me when you land," Rachel said when I dropped off the key, "and don't let those finance bros push you around." I smiled. "I won't." What I didn't mention was that my parents also had a spare key. I'd given it to them in 2022 when they visited for the only time since I bought the house. My mother had asked for it in case of emergencies, a burst pipe, a power outage, something that needed immediate attention. It seemed reasonable. They were my parents. I texted my mother from the gate. Flying out now, back on the 13th. Talk soon. Her reply came 15 minutes later. Safe travels, sweetheart. 12 days is a long time. Make sure someone checks on your house. I smiled at the message, assuming it was normal parental concern. At 30,000 feet somewhere over the Pacific, I closed my eyes and thought about the pitch I'd deliver in Singapore. I had no idea what was happening in my living room back home. Not yet. March 3rd, 2024. 10:17 p.m. Singapore time. 9:17 a.m. in Denver. I was in my hotel room at the Marina Bay Sands, reviewing slides for the next morning's presentation when my phone buzzed with a notification. Ring alert, motion detected at front door camera. I frowned. Probably a delivery driver or a stray dog. I opened the app absently, planning to dismiss it and get back to work. What I saw made my blood run cold. My parents were standing in my living room. Not outside, inside. My father was walking toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. My mother was in the kitchen opening cabinets. My first thought was that something was wrong, a break-in, an emergency, something that required their immediate presence. I almost called them, almost. Then I rewound the footage. The first clip started at 2:47 p.m. Denver time. I watched my mother unlock my front door with the spare key I'd given her 2 years ago. She walked in like she owned the place, my father trailing behind her with a measuring tape. For the next 43 minutes, they toured my house. My mother measured the basement, nodding approvingly. She opened closets. She checked the water pressure in the bathroom. My father took notes on his phone. And then I heard it. My father's voice, hesitant. "Do you really think Myra will be okay with this?" My mother laughed. Not a cruel laugh, just dismissive, casual, the way you'd laugh at someone worrying about a non-issue. "Gerald, please. Once everything is here, she will not make a scene. She will just accept it. You know how she is." I replayed those words 3 times. She will just accept it. You know how she is. My hands were shaking, not with sadness, with something harder, something that had been buried for 34 years. I kept watching. "The basement is perfect for Kyle and Brittany," my mother continued. "It has its own bathroom, plenty of space. Myra barely uses it anyway." I scrolled to my email app, still trembling. That's when I found it, forwarded to the old family email account I still had access to because no one had thought to change the password. A confirmation from U-Haul. A 15-foot truck, reserved under Gerald Seward's name. Pickup date, March 8th. Drop-off location, my address. They weren't asking. They weren't even pretending to ask. They were just taking. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my hotel room with my laptop open, methodically documenting everything. The Ring app let me download footage directly to my device. I saved every clip from March 3rd, 47 minutes of my parents walking through my home like prospective buyers. Then I dug deeper. The U-Haul confirmation email was damning enough. Reservation number UH7823491, 15-foot truck, March 8th pickup at the Westbrook, Ohio location, drop-off same day in Aurora, Colorado, one-way trip. My father's name on the account, his credit card on file. But it was the Ring footage from the next day that truly sealed it. March 4th, 4:23 p.m., Kyle and Brittany arrived. I watched my brother unlock my front door with what must have been a copy of the spare key. He walked straight to my bedroom, not the basement, my actual bedroom, and opened the closet. "This is way better than I expected," he said to Brittany, who was filming on her phone. "Look at this closet space." Brittany panned around the room, giggling. "And the view from this window? So much nicer than that crappy apartment." Mom said the basement, but screw that. Kyle flopped onto my bed, with his shoes still on. Big sister doesn't need the master bedroom. She's never even here. Brittany's voice, off screen. You sure she won't freak out? Kyle snorted. Myra, please. Mom's got her handled. She said, and I quote, leave it to me. I know how to manage her. By the time sis gets back, we'll be settled. What's she gonna do? Kick out family? I screenshot the video at the exact moment my brother's muddy shoes touched my white duvet. Timestamp, March 4th, 2024, 4:31 p.m. They weren't just planning to take my home. They were planning to take my dignity with it, the old Myra would have called. The old Myra would have stammered through a confrontation, listened to her mother's justifications, let her father's silence fill the gaps, and somehow ended up apologizing for being difficult. The old Myra would have told herself that family was family, that keeping the peace mattered more than keeping her house, that she could figure something out. I was done being the old Myra. At 2 a.m. Singapore time, I sat on the edge of my hotel bed and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them over the phone. A phone call would give them time to spin a story. My mother would cry. My father would mumble. Kyle would play the victim. By the end of it, I'd be the villain for overreacting. No. If they wanted to ambush me with a fait accompli, I'd return the favor. And I'd do it somewhere my mother couldn't escape, somewhere her carefully constructed image actually mattered. I pulled up my calendar. March 16th, Mom's 60th birthday party, Hillcrest Country Club. 85 confirmed guests. She'd been planning it for months. The invitations were cream-colored with gold embossing. There would be a DJ, a 3-tier cake, a slideshow of family photos. Every person my mother had ever wanted to impress would be in that room. I picked up my phone and scrolled to my aunt's number. Linda Hartwell, my father's younger sister. She was 63, recently widowed, and the only relative who'd ever pulled me aside at holidays to say, "Your mother isn't fair to you, sweetheart." My text was simple. Aunt Linda, I'm planning to say a few words at Mom's party. Could you let her know I'd like a moment at the mic? The reply came an hour later. Of course, honey. Donna will be thrilled. She always says you don't talk enough at these things. I smiled grimly at my phone. Mom wanted me to talk? Fine. But first, I had to let them dig their own grave a little deeper. The next morning, I video called Rachel before my first meeting. You need to see something, I said, my voice flat. And I need you to tell me I'm not crazy. Rachel's face shifted from sleepy confusion to full alertness as I shared my screen. I played the footage, my mother's dismissive laugh, Kyle's muddy shoes on my bed, the U-Haul confirmation. For 30 seconds after the video ended, Rachel said nothing. Then, Myra, what the actual hell? They're moving him in on March 8th, I said. 5 days from now. This is trespassing. This is... Rachel ran her hands through her hair. How did they even get in? Did they break a window? Spare key. I gave it to them 2 years ago. And they just decided your house was Kyle's now? I nodded. The anger I'd felt the night before had settled into something colder, more focused. She said I would just accept it, I repeated, like I'm not even a person, just an obstacle to manage. Rachel leaned closer to her camera. What are you going to do? I told her about the birthday party, the 85 guests, the plan to let them think they'd won, until they hadn't. For a long moment, Rachel was quiet. Then she exhaled slowly. You're sure about this? This isn't a take-it-back situation. Once you do this, it's done. I know. And you're okay with that? I thought about 34 years of silent accommodations. The Honda Civic while Kyle got a Mustang. The phone calls that only came when someone needed something. The way my mother said Myra doesn't need anything, like it was a fact of nature rather than a failure of love. I'm okay with it, I said. Rachel nodded slowly. Then I've got your back. I'll download backup copies of everything to my cloud, separate from yours. If you need a witness, I'm there. Thank you. And Myra? Rachel's eyes were fierce. Don't you dare feel guilty. They did this, not you. I hung up and went to my meeting. I had a $2.3 million contract to close. That evening, I sent an email to Marcus Webb. Marcus was a real estate attorney who lived 3 houses down from me in Aurora. We'd met at a neighborhood block party the previous summer, and he'd given me his card with the standard, "Let me know if you ever need anything" offer. At the time, I thought I never would. I kept my email professional, clinical. Marcus, I have a legal question regarding property rights. My parents have a spare key to my home, given with permission in 2022 for emergency access. I've learned they plan to move my adult brother into my house without my knowledge or consent while I'm traveling for work. Can you clarify my rights as sole property owner? His response arrived 6 hours later, at 4:12 a.m. Singapore time. He'd clearly stayed up late. Myra, I've reviewed the situation you described. As sole title holder of the property, per public records showing the deed in your name as of October 2021, you have complete authority over who resides there. A spare key given for emergency access does not constitute permission for extended occupancy by third parties. If your brother moves in without written consent, this constitutes unauthorized occupancy. You are within your rights to 1. Demand immediate departure, 2. Change all locks, and 3. Contact law enforcement if they refuse to leave. I recommend documenting everything: video footage, emails, text messages, in case legal action becomes necessary. I'm happy to provide a formal letter if needed. Regards, Marcus Webb, Escrow. Webb and Associates, Real Estate Law. I saved the email. Then I saved it again to a separate folder. The pieces were falling into place: video evidence, email documentation, legal confirmation. All I had to do now was wait and watch my family prove exactly who they were. Over the next 2 days, I built my trap with the same precision I applied to cybersecurity assessments. Step 1. Additional documentation. I contacted Ring customer support and requested a verification letter confirming that my account had continuous cloud backup from February through March 2024. They emailed a PDF within 24 hours, time-stamped, authenticated, with my account details. If anyone tried to claim the footage was edited, I had a tech company's records to prove otherwise. Step 2. Redundancy. Rachel purchased 2 small cameras from Amazon, the same model I already had, so they'd sync to my existing app. She picked them up at her address and installed them in my house on March 5th, positioning one in the basement and one in the hallway outside my bedroom. If Kyle and Brittany were going to take over my home, I wanted every angle. Step 3. Social engineering. I called my Aunt Linda on March 6th, keeping my voice light. "I'm so looking forward to Mom's party," I said. "I've been thinking about what to say. I want it to be meaningful." "That's so sweet, Myra." Aunt Linda's voice was warm. "Your mother will love that. She's always saying you don't express yourself enough." I bit back a bitter laugh. "How many people are coming?" 85, last count. Everyone who's anyone at Hillcrest, plus family, of course." She paused. "You know, I heard something about Kyle moving somewhere new. Do you know anything about that?" My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice neutral. "Oh? Your mother mentioned he'd found stability. She seemed very pleased." Another pause. "Myra, you do know, don't you?" "I know, Aunt Linda. I know exactly what's happening." Her silence stretched for a long moment. "I've watched your mother for 40 years, she finally said. "I've never agreed with how she treats you. If you need me in your corner—" "I might," I said. "I just might." I hung up and checked my Ring app. Kyle's car was in my driveway. The move was starting. March 8th, 2024, 9:07 a.m. Denver time, 12:07 a.m. in Singapore the next day. I should have been sleeping. Instead, I was watching my house get invaded in real time. The U-Haul truck pulled into my driveway at 9:03 a.m. Gerald was driving, Kyle rode shotgun, and Brittany followed in Kyle's beat-up Nissan with 2 of his friends, guys I vaguely recognized from old Facebook photos. For the next 6 hours, I watched them systematically move my brother's life into my home. At 9:47 a.m., they started unloading boxes into the basement. I allowed myself a grim satisfaction. At least they were following my mother's original plan. That satisfaction lasted exactly 3 hours. At 12:52 p.m., Kyle reappeared on camera, inside my bedroom. He was directing his friends to push my bed against the wall. "The couch goes there," he said, pointing to where my reading chair had been. "And the TV mount needs to go on that wall. Brittany wants the closet cleared out by tonight." One of his friends, a heavy-set guy in a baseball cap, looked uncomfortable. "Dude, isn't this your sister's room?" Kyle waved dismissively. "She's got like 3 bedrooms. She doesn't need the big one. Besides, it's not like she's gonna say anything. Myra's like pathologically non-confrontational." I screenshot that moment. Timestamp, 12:54 p.m. By 2 p.m. my mother arrived. She walked through the house with the satisfaction of a general surveying conquered territory, adjusting picture frames, tutting at the dust on my bookshelves. "This will work perfectly," she said to my father. "Once Kyle is settled, Myra will see it makes sense. She's always been the practical one." Gerald, to his minimal credit, looked uneasy. "I still think we should have asked her." "Asked?" My mother's laugh was sharp. "Gerald, if we asked, she would have said no. And then what? Kyle on the street? Our son? No. This is family helping family. Myra will understand." At 6:17 p.m. they ordered pizza. 3 large pies delivered to my address. They ate in my living room, on my couch, watching my television. At 7:43 p.m., my mother called my phone. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was bright and cheerful. "Hi, sweetheart. Just calling to check in. I have some wonderful news about Kyle that I can't wait to share. Call me when you land." I saved the voicemail to my evidence folder. 47 video clips, 14 hours of footage, one family that assumed I would just accept it. They had no idea what was coming. I'm going to pause here because I need to ask you something. If you caught your family doing this, moving into your home, taking your bedroom, eating your food, all while assuming you'd just accept it, what would you do? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to find out what happened at my mother's birthday party, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. While my family was settling into my house, I was closing the biggest deal of my career. March 12, 2024. The final presentation to Meridian Financial's executive team. I walked into that conference room with 12 days of suppressed rage simmering beneath a polished exterior. Every frustration, every betrayal, every timestamp I'd memorized, I channeled all of it into laser focus. The presentation was flawless. 47 slides on network architecture, data encryption protocols, compliance frameworks, and implementation timelines. When the CFO asked about potential vulnerabilities, I didn't hesitate. When the CTO challenged our pricing model, I had counter-arguments ready. I was calm. I was thorough. I was completely in control. By 4 p.m. Singapore time, we had a verbal commitment. David Morrison called me from Denver that night, his voice cracking with rare enthusiasm. "Myra, the Meridian team just emailed me. They said, and I'm quoting, 'We've never seen someone handle our concerns with such composure and precision. Contract signing is confirmed for March 15th. You did it.' Thank you, David. Senior manager position is yours. $5,000 bonus hits your account end of next month." He paused. "You sound tired. Everything okay?" I looked at my phone where the Ring app still showed Kyle's car in my driveway. "Just jet lag," I said. "I'll be fine once I'm home." I booked my return flight for March 13th, arriving in Denver the morning of the 14th. That gave me 2 days before the contract signing, and 2 days before my mother's party. 47 video clips, email confirmations, legal opinion, backup storage with Rachel. I created a PowerPoint presentation that night, sitting alone in my hotel room. 12 slides, 4 embedded video clips, 1 timeline. Everything they'd said, everything they'd done, all of it ready to be displayed on an 85-inch screen at the Hillcrest Country Club. March 14th, 2024, 7:23 a.m., Denver International Airport. I walked through arrivals with my carry-on, phone already open to the Ring app. Kyle's Nissan and Brittany's Honda were both parked in my driveway. Smoke rose from my chimney. They'd figured out how to use the fireplace. For a moment, I imagined driving there, confronting them, watching their faces as they realized I knew everything. But that would be giving them an out. If I confronted them privately, my mother would spin it. I'd become the heartless sister who threw Kyle onto the street. The story would be all about my cruelty, not their violation. By the time my mother finished telling her version at the country club, I'd be the villain and she'd be the suffering martyr. No. I drove past my exit and checked into the Maven Hotel in downtown Denver. $312 a night, worth every penny for the peace of mind. My text to my mother was carefully crafted. Landed safely. Jet lag is rough. Staying at a hotel near the office tonight to rest before the contract signing tomorrow. See everyone at your party on the 16th. Her response came in 11 minutes. Sounds good, sweetheart. Can't wait to see you. I have a wonderful surprise to share. 3 exclamation points. A wonderful surprise. I almost admired her audacity. The next morning, March 15th, I walked into Sterling Cyber Solutions headquarters in my best gray suit. The Meridian team had flown in from Singapore, and by 2 p.m., we had signed contracts worth $2.3 million. David Morrison shook my hand in front of the entire executive team. To Myra Seward, he said, who closed the biggest deal in our company's history without missing a single beat. If only he knew what I'd been managing on the side. That night, I sat in my hotel room and practiced my speech. 12 slides, 4 video clips, 85 witnesses, 24 hours until my mother's birthday party. The night before the party, Rachel came to my hotel room. She sat on the edge of the bed while I ran through the presentation one final time, checking that each video clip loaded correctly, that the audio was clear, that the timestamps were visible. "You're really doing this," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm really doing it." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." I looked up from my laptop. "Okay. Is this about justice, or is it about revenge?" The question hung in the air between us. I'd asked myself the same thing a dozen times over the past week. "I've thought about Sat," I said slowly. "A lot. And here's what I keep coming back to. If I confront them privately, nothing changes. My mother will cry, make excuses, maybe apologize without meaning it. In 6 months, there'll be another boundary crossed, another assumption that I'll just accept it. The only way to break the pattern is to make the cost visible, public, undeniable. And if it destroys your relationship with them?" I closed my laptop. "Rachel, what relationship? They literally took over my house without asking. My mother said I was easy to manage. My brother called me pathologically non-confrontational. That's not a relationship. That's an arrangement where I absorb whatever they throw at me." Rachel nodded slowly. She reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. "Backup of everything," she said. "Video files, email screenshots, Marcus's letter, just in case." I took it. "Thank you, for everything." "One more thing." Rachel's eyes were fierce. "Don't you dare apologize when you're up there. Not once. They did this. You're just showing people what they did." I hugged her. Tomorrow, Donna Seward's carefully constructed world would finally meet reality. March 16th, 2024, 5:47 p.m., Hillcrest Country Club. The venue was everything my mother had dreamed of. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across white linen tablecloths. A string quartet played softly near the bar. Gold balloons spelled 60 above a 3-tier cake decorated with sugar flowers. The Hillcrest logo, a discreet cursive H, was everywhere. On napkins, on the welcome banner, on the little chocolate squares at each place setting. 85 guests milled around in cocktail attire, the women in tasteful dresses and pearls, the men in sport coats and polished loafers. These were the people my mother had spent 30 years cultivating. Country club members, charity committee colleagues, old family friends. The people whose opinions shaped her identity. I arrived in a navy sheath dress I'd bought specifically for this moment. Professional, composed, unremarkable. The USB drive was in my clutch. Earlier that afternoon, I'd spoken to the club's AV technician under the pretense of helping with a birthday slideshow. The projector was ready. The screen was positioned perfectly. Kyle spotted me first. He was standing near the bar with Brittany, both of them laughing at something on his phone. He looked comfortable, confident, like a man who'd just gotten away with something. Myra! He waved me over. Hey, glad you could make it. Mom's been looking for you. I smiled pleasantly. I wouldn't miss it. Brittany leaned in, her voice conspiratorial. So, your mom probably wants to tell you about our situation. Just act surprised, okay? She wants it to be a big reveal. I'll do my best, I said. Across the room, I spotted my mother in a champagne-colored dress, her hair freshly styled, her smile radiant as she greeted guests. My father stood slightly behind her, quiet and watchful. Then my mother saw me. Myra, baby, come here. She rushed over and pulled me into a hug that smelled like Chanel No. 5 and self-satisfaction. I'm so glad you're here, she whispered. I have the most wonderful news to share. Tonight is going to be perfect. I hugged her back. Yes, Mom, I said. I think it will be. At 6:32 p.m., my mother took the stage. The string quartet stopped. The crowd gathered. Someone dimmed the lights, leaving a single spotlight on Donna Seward as she stepped up to the microphone with the grace of a woman who'd been rehearsing this moment for months. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Her voice was warm, practiced, perfect. 60 years, can you believe it? I look at this room full of the people I love and I feel so blessed. Appreciative murmurs, a few glasses raised. I want to take a moment to talk about what matters most to me. Family. She paused for effect, her eyes sweeping the crowd. My wonderful husband Gerald, who's put up with me for 37 years. Polite laughter. My beautiful daughter Myra, who's built such an impressive career out in Colorado. A few heads turned my way. And my son Kyle, who, I'm so happy to announce, has finally found stability. Kyle grinned from his spot near the bar. Brittany squeezed his arm. In fact, my mother continued, her voice rising with theatrical excitement, Kyle and his lovely girlfriend Brittany have just moved into a beautiful new home. A fresh start. This family has always supported each other, and I'm so proud that we could help make this happen. Applause. Actual applause. I watched 85 people clap for my mother's version of events. The sanitized story where everything was a gift, freely given, wrapped in family love. My jaw ached from clenching. And now, Donna said, beaming, I'd like to invite my daughter Myra up to say a few words. Myra, sweetheart? I rose from my seat. The walk to the stage felt endless. Past tables of country club members, past relatives I barely recognized, past Kyle and Brittany's smug smiles. Each step was another chance to turn back, to let it go, to be the accommodating daughter one more time. I didn't turn back. My mother handed me the microphone with a proud smile. Say something sweet, honey, she whispered. I turned to face the crowd. Thank you, Mom. And thank you all for being here. I paused. Before I continue, I need to clarify something. Mom just mentioned that Kyle moved into a beautiful new home. She's absolutely right. It is beautiful. I know because I'm the one who bought it. It's my house. And no one asked me if Kyle could live there. The silence was immediate, total. And I was just getting started. Myra, my mother's voice was strained. What are you? I'm clarifying, Mom. That's all. I kept my voice steady, professional, the same tone I used in boardroom presentations. I think everyone here deserves the full story. I pulled the USB drive from my clutch and walked to the podium where the laptop was already connected. The AV technician, bless him, had followed my instructions perfectly. The projector hummed to life. This is the deed to my house in Aurora, Colorado. Slide 1 appeared on the screen. A crisp image of the title document, my name highlighted in yellow. Purchased October 2021. Down payment of $97,000 from my personal savings. Mortgage in my name, mine. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. 2 years ago, I gave my parents a spare key for emergencies. Last month, while I was in Singapore on a business trip, they used that key to do this. I clicked to the next slide. The video started. The footage was crystal clear. My mother walking through my living room, measuring tape in hand. My father trailing behind, taking notes. The timestamp in the corner read 03/03/2024, 2:47 p.m. And then my mother's voice, unmistakable. Gerald, please, once everything is here, she will not make a scene. She will just accept it. You know how she is. I paused the video. The ballroom was dead silent. I looked at my mother, whose face had gone gray. That's you, Mom. In my house, planning to move Kyle in without telling me, without asking, because you assumed I would just accept it. You can't. My mother's voice cracked. She turned to the crowd, desperate. This is a family matter. This is private. You made it public, Mom. Right here, 10 minutes ago, when you announced Kyle's fresh start, like it was something to celebrate. I clicked to the next slide. Here's the U-Haul confirmation email. Reservation number UH782341, 15-foot truck, reserved by Gerald Seward. Pickup in Ohio, drop off at my address. A murmur rippled through the room. I saw people leaning toward each other, whispering. And here's Kyle and Brittany in my bedroom, my actual bedroom, on March 4th. The next video clip played, Kyle on my bed, shoes on my duvet, saying, Myra's pathologically non-confrontational. I turned to face my brother. Surprise, Kyle. I'm confronting. Kyle's face shifted through 5 emotions in 3 seconds: confusion, recognition, panic, denial, and finally, fury. This is bullshit! He stepped forward, pointing at me. You can't just... This is our family. You don't air this stuff in public. I didn't move into someone else's home without permission, Kyle. You did. I clicked to the next slide. March 8th, 9:07 a.m. Here's the U-Haul arriving at my driveway. The video played. My father behind the wheel, Kyle in the passenger seat, the truck pulling up to my house like they owned it. Over the next 6 hours, you moved all your belongings into my home. Not the basement like Mom originally planned, but my bedroom. Because, and I quote, I clicked to the clip of Kyle talking to his friend. His voice filled the ballroom. She's got like 3 bedrooms. She doesn't need the big one. Besides, it's not like she's gonna say anything. Myra's like pathologically non-confrontational. Someone in the crowd gasped. I saw Mrs. Patterson, one of my mother's oldest friends, cover her mouth with her hand. You took my room, Kyle. You pushed my bed against the wall. You told Brittany to clear out my closet. All while I was 7,000 miles away, closing a $2.3 million contract that I was told not to let anything distract me from. I let that number sit for a moment. 2.3 million. 85 pairs of eyes recalculating their assumptions about Myra in Colorado. And here's my favorite part. The final video clip began. My mother at 2 p.m. on March 8th, walking through my house with a decorator's eye, nodding approvingly. This will work perfectly. Once Kyle is settled, Myra will see it makes sense. She's always been the practical one. Then my father's voice, hesitant. I still think we should have asked her. And my mother's reply. Asked? Gerald, if we asked, she would have said no. And then what? Kyle on the street? Our son? No. This is family helping family. Myra will understand. I paused the video. I understand perfectly, Mom. You assumed I wouldn't say no because you never gave me the chance. You assumed I'd be practical because that's what you've trained me to be for 34 years. I looked directly at her. But here's what you didn't calculate. I'm done being practical for people who treat my boundaries like suggestions. The room was absolutely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, just 85 people watching Donna Seward's perfect world crack down the middle. My mother stood frozen at the edge of the stage, her champagne-colored dress suddenly looking less elegant, more fragile. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the way her face had crumpled. "Myra," her voice was hoarse, You're ruining my birthday. In front of everyone. This is cruelty. No, Mom. This is consequences." I stepped away from the podium. "You didn't ask me, you didn't tell me, you walked into my home, the home I paid for with money I earned, and decided what to do with it like I was an afterthought. I was trying to help Kyle. You were trying to use me." My voice stayed level, but the words carried. There's a difference. Helping would have been a phone call. Helping would have been, "Myra, Kyle is struggling. Can we discuss options?" What you did was assume that my feelings, my property, my life, could be rearranged to suit whatever was convenient for you. My father stepped forward. For a moment I thought he might defend my mother. Instead, his voice came out broken. "Myra, I'm sorry. I should have—" He stopped, swallowed. "I should have stopped it. I knew it was wrong." I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. "You should have, Dad. 34 years of knowing things were wrong and saying nothing." I paused. "But at least you're saying it now." From across the room, my Aunt Linda stood up. She was a small woman, gray-haired and soft-spoken, but when she spoke, the whole room heard her. "Donna." Her voice was calm, sad. "I've watched you do this to Myra her whole life. Dismiss her, overlook her, make her feel like she's less important than Kyle. Tonight she finally said enough." She looked at me, her eyes glistening. "I'm proud of you, Myra. This took courage." My mother whirled toward her sister-in-law. "You're taking her side? This is my birthday!" "And it's her life," Aunt Linda replied quietly. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you stole it." The crowd had begun to thin. Guests were slipping toward the exits, murmuring apologies about early mornings and babysitters. No one was looking at my mother the same way anymore. Kyle shoved his way through the remaining guests toward the stage, Brittany trailing behind. "This is insane." His face was flushed red. "You're making this huge scene over nothing. It's just a house. Family shares. That's what family does." "It's my house, Kyle." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "And you're leaving it. You have 48 hours to pack your things and go." "You can't do that." I held up my phone. "This is an email from Marcus Webb, real estate attorney. He's confirmed that as sole title holder, I have complete legal authority over who lives in my property. You moved in without written consent. That's unauthorized occupancy. If you're not out by March 18th at 6 p.m., I'll contact the Aurora Police Department and have you removed." Kyle's mouth opened and closed. For once in his life, he had no clever comeback. Brittany grabbed his arm. "Kyle, let's just go." "No, this isn't fair. Mom said you'd get away with it." I stepped closer to my brother. "She was wrong. And if you want to argue about fairness, maybe start with the $47,000 in student loans I paid off by myself while Mom was still covering your minimum payments. Or the Honda Civic I bought with babysitting money while you got a Mustang for your birthday. Or every single time you got bailed out of a mess you made while I got told to be understanding." The silence that followed was devastating. Kyle's bravado cracked. For a split second, I saw something in his face. Not anger, but shame. Then it was gone, replaced by sullenness. "Come on," Brittany pulled harder. "We're leaving." They walked out of the ballroom without looking back. The door swung shut behind them with a hollow thud. I turned to face what remained of the party. Maybe 30 people, frozen in their seats, witnessing the complete disintegration of my mother's fairy tale. "I'm sorry you all had to see this," I said quietly. "But I'm not sorry I showed you the truth." I set the microphone on the podium and walked off the stage. By 7:15 p.m., the party was effectively over. The string quartet had packed up. The catering staff were clearing untouched appetizers from tables. The three-tier cake sat uncut beneath its 60 balloons, a monument to celebrations that never quite happened. Of the 85 guests who'd arrived, maybe 30 remained, mostly relatives and a handful of my mother's oldest friends who seemed unsure whether to comfort her or question everything they thought they knew. My mother sat at a corner table staring at nothing. Her champagne flute was empty. My father stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in an hour. I was near the exit gathering my coat when Aunt Linda found me. "Myra," she touched my arm gently. "How are you holding up?" I don't know yet." It was the truth. The adrenaline was fading, leaving something raw and uncertain in its place. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did." Mrs. Patterson, my mother's longtime friend, the woman who'd gasped during the video, approached hesitantly. "Myra, I had no idea." Her voice was small, ashamed. "Your mother always said you agreed to these things, that you were happy to help Kyle. She never told you she didn't ask," I finished. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. "I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner." "Thank you." It was all I could manage. I looked back at my mother one more time. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken to anyone since I'd left the stage. Part of me wanted to go to her, to explain, to try to make her understand. But that was the old Myra talking. The new Myra put on her coat and walked out into the cold March night. 32 minutes later, my mother found me in the country club parking lot. I was sitting in my rental car, engine running, heat blasting. I should have driven away already. But something kept me there, some thread of the dutiful daughter I'd been for 34 years, waiting to see if anything had changed. A knock on the passenger window. My mother's face, pale in the parking lot lights. I unlocked the door. She slid in, bringing a wave of cold air and Chanel No. 5. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Myra?" Her voice was ragged. I'm sorry." I waited. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Kyle. I should have called first. I just thought—" She stopped, swallowed. "I thought you would understand. You always understand. You're the strong one." "That's the problem, Mom." "What?" "That's exactly the problem." I turned to face her fully. "You've spent my entire life telling yourself that I'm strong, that I don't need anything, that I'll just accept it. But what you actually mean is that I'm convenient, that I won't push back, that you can take and take and take because I'll absorb it." Her eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair, isn't it?" I gestured toward the country club behind us. "In there, 30 minutes ago, you stood in front of 85 people and announced that Kyle had moved into a beautiful new home, without ever mentioning that it was mine, that I never agreed, that you assumed my consent because you've trained me my whole life to give it." "I was trying to help your brother." "You were trying to manage me." The words came out flat, factual, and it worked. For 34 years, it worked perfectly. "But Mom, I need you to hear this. I'm not your solution to Kyle's problems. I'm not your backup plan. I'm your daughter. And I deserve to be asked." She was crying now, mascara running. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "I don't either." I paused. "But we're not going to figure it out tonight. I need space, at least a month. No calls, no texts, no showing up at my house. If you want to have a real relationship, one where you actually listen, we'll talk. But not now." She nodded, tears falling silently. "I love you, Mom. But loving you can't mean letting you walk over me anymore." I waited until she got out of the car, then I drove away. I want to pause here and ask you something personal. Have you ever had to set a boundary with your own family? Not a stranger, not a coworker, your own blood? It's one of the hardest things you can do, but sometimes it's the only thing that will save you. If this story is resonating with you, drop a comment below. And please subscribe if you haven't already. We're almost at the end, and there's a lot more to tell. March 17th, 2024. 10:14 a.m. I pulled into my driveway for the first time in 16 days. Rachel was in the passenger seat. I'd asked her to come as a witness just in case. Kyle's Nissan and Brittany's Honda were still there. Through the front window, I could see movement inside. "You ready?" Rachel asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." I unlocked my own front door with the key I'd never given away. The living room looked different. Kyle's gaming setup was half disassembled on my coffee table. Boxes were stacked against the wall, some taped shut, some still gaping open. Brittany was wrapping dishes in newspaper, my dishes, before placing them in a plastic bin. Kyle was on the couch, scrolling his phone. He looked up when I walked in. His expression cycled through several emotions before settling on defiant resentment. "You actually came," he said flatly. "Thought you'd just send the cops." "I gave you 48 hours. You have until 6 p.m. tomorrow. I'm here to make sure you're taking your things, not mine." Brittany set down a dish. "Kyle, let's just finish and go, please." "This is ridiculous." Kyle threw his phone onto the couch. "You humiliated Mom in front of everyone. You know she's barely speaking to anyone now?" Mrs. Patterson called to express concern. "Do you have any idea what you've done to her reputation?" "I showed people the truth, Kyle. That's all. The truth is, family helps each other, but you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Too busy with your fancy job and your empty house." I felt Rachel tense beside me, but I kept my voice level. Family asks. Family communicates. Family respects boundaries. What you and Mom did wasn't help. It was entitlement. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Kyle stared at me for a long moment. Then something in him deflated. "Whatever," he muttered. "We'll be out by tomorrow." I nodded. "I'm calling a locksmith this afternoon. All the locks get changed. The spare key situation is over." By 3 p.m. the next day, Kyle and Brittany were gone. The locksmith invoice came to $487. 4 new locks plus a garage rekey. Worth every cent. The social fallout hit my mother like a slow-motion avalanche. Within a week of the party, the ripples had spread through every corridor of the Hillcrest Country Club. 85 witnesses meant 85 separate conversations, 85 retellings, 85 opportunities for the story to grow and mutate. On March 23rd, Aunt Linda called me with an update. "Your mother was asked to step down from the Spring Charity Gala Committee," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "They said they needed someone who could focus fully on the event." I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel anything, really. "Who asked her?" "The club president. And Mrs. Patterson, same woman who spent 20 years on those committees with your mother, apparently suggested it might be best." The same Mrs. Patterson who'd approached me at the party, claiming she had no idea. Apparently her sympathy had limits. "How's Mom taking it?" "She's not doing well. She's barely left the house. Your father says she cries most afternoons." I closed my eyes. "I didn't want this, Aunt Linda. I just wanted her to understand." "I know, sweetheart, but understanding and consequences aren't the same thing. She's facing both now, and she's not handling it gracefully." That same week, my father called me. The first time he'd ever initiated contact without my mother's prompting. "Your mother's struggling," he said, his voice tired. "I'm not calling to guilt you. I'm calling because I should have done more. A long time ago." "You should have, Dad." "I know." A long pause. "Myra, I love you. And I'm sorry I let you down. It wasn't enough. But it was more than I'd ever gotten before." "I love you too, Dad. Let's take it one step at a time. We talked for 20 more minutes, the longest conversation we'd had in years. Kyle's fresh start lasted exactly 3 weeks. After leaving my house, he and Brittany bounced between friends' couches, wearing out their welcome faster than anyone anticipated. By early April, they were down to one last option: Kyle's college buddy Marcus, who had a pull-out sofa and declining patience. My mother, predictably, tried to intervene. They could stay with us, she told my father, just until Kyle finds something. According to Aunt Linda, who was present for this conversation, my father did something unprecedented. He said no. Donna, he said, we've been helping Kyle his entire life. Where has it gotten him? 31 years old, no stable job, no savings, expecting other people to fix his problems. Maybe it's time he figures it out himself. My mother didn't speak to him for 2 days, but she didn't override him either. Without a family safety net to fall back on, Kyle was forced to do something novel: function independently. He applied to a dozen jobs in 2 weeks. Most didn't call back. A few did. On April 8th, he started working at an Amazon fulfillment center. $18 an hour, 4 10-hour shifts per week. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the sales management career he'd always talked about, but it was a paycheck. Brittany lasted exactly 19 days after that. She told me she didn't sign up for this, Kyle admitted to my father during a phone call that Aunt Linda later relayed to me. For struggling, for a normal apartment, she thought I was going to, I don't know, level up or something. And you thought Myra's house was the level up, my father said quietly. Kyle didn't answer. When I heard all this secondhand, I felt something unexpected, not satisfaction, but sadness. My brother wasn't evil, he was just thoroughly enabled by my parents, by the women in his life, by a family system that never required him to stand on his own feet. Maybe, finally, he was learning. I didn't reach out. Not yet. But I didn't close the door completely either. While my family was dealing with the wreckage, my career kept climbing. On April 1st, my promotion to senior manager at Sterling Cyber Solutions became official. David Morrison announced it at the quarterly all-hands meeting, calling me out specifically for the Meridian deal. Myra Seward closed the biggest contract in our company's history, he said, while handling a personal situation that would have derailed most people. She never missed a deadline, never missed a meeting. That's the kind of professional we want leading teams. If only he knew what personal situation actually meant. The $45,000 bonus hit my account on April 15th. I looked at the deposit notification for a long time, thinking about what it represented. 7 years of work, 12 days in Singapore, and a lifetime of being underestimated. My new salary was $215,000 annually. Not bad for the daughter who didn't need anything. But the money wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was walking into that office every day, knowing I'd gotten there on my own terms. No family connections. No handouts. No one to credit but myself. I started building something else, too. A network of people who actually valued me. Rachel, of course, was already there, but I made a conscious effort to invest in friendships I'd neglected during years of family obligations. Colleagues, neighbors, the book club I'd quit because my mother always needed something on meeting nights. For the first time in my adult life, my calendar wasn't organized around anyone else's crises. I took a weekend trip to Santa Fe in late April. Just me. No agenda. No phone calls to manage someone else's emotions. I sat in a cafe watching the sunset over the desert and felt something I barely recognized: peace. April 6th, 2024. A Sunday afternoon. My father asked to meet me at a coffee shop in downtown Denver, neutral territory. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. In 34 years, he'd never once asked to see me alone. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. He looked older than I remembered, more gray in his hair, more lines around his eyes. Myra, He stood when he saw me, then seemed unsure whether to hug me. Thank you for coming. I slid into the booth across from him. You said you wanted to talk. I did. I do. He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, staring at the surface. I've been thinking. About everything. About the past 34 years. I waited. I owe you an apology, he said finally. Not for the house, though that too, but for longer. For all of it. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wet. I watched your mother favor Kyle. I watched her dismiss you. I watched her make you feel like you weren't enough, and I said nothing. Because saying something meant fighting with Donna, and He broke off. I was a coward. Yes, I said quietly. You were. He flinched, but he didn't argue. I told myself you were strong enough to handle it, that you didn't need me to step in, but that was just an excuse. He wiped his eyes with a napkin. The truth is, I chose peace with your mother over justice for you. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The words hung between us. Thank you for saying that, I finally said. I can't tell you it doesn't matter, because it does. It shaped who I am in ways I'm still figuring out. I know. But, I paused, choosing my words carefully. I'm not closing the door, Dad. I need to see change, not just words, real change. If you can show me that, then maybe we can build something. He nodded, tears still falling. I'll try, he said. I promise I'll try. We sat there for another hour, talking more openly than we ever had. It was a beginning, fragile, uncertain, but real. The letter arrived on April 20th, handwritten, 3 pages, my mother's familiar cursive slanting across lavender stationery. I opened it at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, bracing myself for whatever version of reality she'd constructed. Dear Myra, I've started this letter 6 times. Each time, I tear it up because the words don't come out right. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I've spent so many years saying the wrong things that I don't know how to say the right ones anymore. I'm sorry I didn't ask you about Kyle. I should have called. I should have respected your home as yours. I told myself I was helping family, but I was really just avoiding a hard conversation. That wasn't fair to you. I've been thinking about what you said, that I've been managing you instead of listening to you. It's a hard thing to hear about yourself. I keep wanting to argue with it. But I can't deny that you know how you feel. And if that's how you feel, then something I did made you feel that way. I paused on that paragraph. It wasn't quite taking responsibility, more like acknowledging my experience without claiming fault. A step, maybe. Or a sidestep. The next page continued. What I don't understand is why you had to do it that way. At my birthday. In front of everyone. Couldn't you have told me privately? I've lost friends over this, Myra. People look at me differently now. There it was, the pivot back to herself. The real wound. Not what she'd done, but how she'd been exposed. I finished the letter, then sat with it for a long time. She was trying, in her limited way. But she still didn't truly understand. She saw my public confrontation as cruelty rather than consequence. She measured her loss in social capital, not in the trust she'd broken. I wrote back that evening, Mom, thank you for the letter. I hear that you're sorry, but I also hear that you're still focused on how you were hurt, not on why I felt I had no other option. Before we can move forward, I need you to understand. I didn't have a private conversation because you've never listened to private conversations. 34 years of them went nowhere. I'm willing to try family therapy together. If you're serious about understanding, that's the path forward. If not, we continue as we are, civil but distant. Your daughter, Myra. By May 2024, I'd found something I'd never had before. Balance. My house was mine again. Quiet, peaceful, exactly as I'd left it before Singapore. The new locks gleamed on every door. The Ring cameras kept their silent watch, though I checked them far less often now. There was no one to catch. Work continued to thrive. As senior manager, I'd inherited a team of 8 analysts and 2 major accounts beyond Meridian. My days were full of strategy meetings, client presentations, and mentoring junior staff who reminded me of myself a decade earlier. Talented, driven, unsure if anyone noticed. I made sure to notice. My relationship with my family had settled into something new. Not healed, healing takes longer than 2 months, but clarified. My father called every 2 weeks, keeping his word. Our conversations were short but genuine. Updates about his garden, questions about my projects, small talk that felt like bridge building rather than obligation. He'd started pushing back on my mother in minor ways, disagreeing about restaurant choices, spending Saturday mornings at the hardware store instead of accompanying her to club events. Baby steps, but steps. My mother and I had attended one therapy session together, just one so far. Dr. Elaine Wright was a family therapist with 30 years of experience and zero tolerance for deflection. When my mother tried to redirect the conversation toward how embarrassing the birthday party had been, Dr. Wright gently but firmly brought it back. "We're here to discuss patterns, Donna, not public perception." My mother cried, she argued, she scheduled a second session. Progress, maybe. Kyle and I hadn't spoken since he left my house. I was okay with that. Some distances need to exist before any bridges can be built. Aunt Linda and I met for lunch on the first Sunday of every month. She'd become something I'd never had growing up, a family member who saw me clearly and loved me anyway. I adopted a cat in late May, a gray tabby named Pixel who'd been overlooked at the shelter for months. We understood each other perfectly. The text arrived on June 15th, 4 months after the birthday party. "Hey, it's Kyle. I know I probably shouldn't be texting you, but I wanted you to know something. I've kept my job at Amazon for 3 months now. First time I've held something that long in years. I'm not asking for anything. Just thought you should know." I stared at my phone for a long time. The old Myra would have responded immediately, something warm and forgiving, an invitation to talk, an open door. The old Myra would have been so relieved that her brother was reaching out that she'd have forgotten why she'd needed to set boundaries in the first place. I wasn't the old Myra anymore. I waited 48 hours before responding. When I did, I chose my words with the same care I'd bring to a contract negotiation. "Kyle, I'm glad to hear you're doing better. Holding a job for 3 months is a real accomplishment, and I hope you're proud of yourself. You should be. I'm open to staying in contact, but I need you to understand something. I'm not your safety net. I'm not someone you come to when things fall apart. If we're going to have a relationship, it has to be as equals, not as the responsible sister and the struggling brother. If you can work with that, we can talk. If not, I wish you well from a distance. Myra." His reply came an hour later. "I get it, I really do, and I'm not looking for a bailout. I just wanted you to know that what happened, it made me think. About a lot of things. Maybe we can get coffee sometime. No agenda, just coffee." I left the message unanswered for 3 days. Then, maybe, when I'm ready, I'll reach out. That was the truth. And for now, it was enough. One night in late June, I found myself sitting on my couch with my laptop open, Pixel curled beside me. I don't know what made me do it. Curiosity, maybe. Or the need to confirm that everything I remembered was real, that I hadn't exaggerated the betrayal in my memory. I opened the archive folder and found the video from March 3rd. My mother's face filled the screen, younger looking than I remembered, her voice clear and dismissive. "Once everything is here, she will not make a scene. She will just accept it. You know how she is." I watched it twice. The strange thing was, it didn't hurt anymore. Not like it had in that Singapore hotel room when my hands shook and my chest felt like it was caving in. Now it just felt distant, like watching a documentary about someone else's life. I closed the file and saved it back to the archive. I didn't delete it. Evidence was evidence, and I wasn't naive enough to think everything was permanently resolved, but I didn't need to watch it again. I carried my laptop to the kitchen, poured a glass of wine, and walked out to my back patio. The Denver night was warm, the stars partially visible through the city glow. Pixel followed me, weaving between my ankles before settling on the chair beside me. They thought I was weak, I said aloud, to Pixel, to myself, to no one in particular. They thought silence meant acceptance. Compliance meant contentment. They were wrong. I sipped my wine and looked up at the sky. The cameras in the corners of my house kept their quiet vigil, but they weren't watching for family anymore. They were just watching for me. And that made all the difference. July 2024 felt like the first month of the rest of my life. I started seeing a therapist of my own, not because I was broken, but because healing requires more than just distance from the people who hurt you. It requires understanding why you let them. Dr. Wright, the same therapist handling the family sessions, recommended a colleague named Dr. Sarah Monroe, who specialized in adult children from enmeshed families. In our first session, she asked me a question no one had ever asked before. What do you want your life to look like in 5 years, Myra? Not your career, not your family relationships, your life. I didn't have an immediate answer. I'd spent so long defining myself by my achievements and my family's expectations that I'd never thought about what I actually wanted for myself. But I was learning. I booked a trip to Portugal with Rachel, 2 weeks in September, our first real vacation together. We spent hours planning an itinerary: Lisbon, Porto, the Douro Valley. No work emails, no family obligations, just two friends exploring a new country. I started saying no to things that drained me, and yes to things that filled me up. I stopped measuring my worth by how useful I was to other people. Pixel and I fell into a comfortable routine: morning coffee on the patio, evening reading on the couch, weekend hikes in the foothills. For the first time in 34 years, my life felt like mine. Not borrowed, not contingent, not waiting for approval, just mine. I'm standing in my living room now, telling you this story. The afternoon light comes through the windows I picked out myself, falling across the hardwood floors I paid for with money I earned. Pixel is asleep on the chair my mother once measured for Kyle's gaming setup. The Ring camera in the corner blinks its quiet blue light, still watching, still recording, still mine. Some people will hear this story and think I destroyed my family. They'll say I should have handled it privately. They'll say blood is thicker than water, that you don't air dirty laundry in public, that I went too far. Here's what I know. I spent 34 years handling things privately. 34 years of quiet accommodation. 34 years of being the easy daughter who didn't need anything. Where did it get me? Standing in a hotel room in Singapore, watching my own mother give away my home because she assumed I wouldn't fight back. So I fought back, not with cruelty, not with revenge, but with truth, spoken in the only place my mother valued enough to finally listen. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself, if you've been the family member who always gives, always forgives, always absorbs, I need you to hear this. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect your space, your peace, your life. It's not selfish. It's not cruel. It's survival. And if the people who are supposed to love you can't handle your boundaries, that tells you everything you need to know about their love. That's my story. Thanks for listening. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And please subscribe. There are more stories like this in the description about people who finally decided they were worth standing up for. Take care of yourself. You're worth it.